Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. And join me today as we look at one of the most iconic aircraft of the Korean War era, the MiG-15. This little jet not only changed the game, but forever cemented its legacy as one of the best fighters of all time. The MiG-15 first took to the skies in the 1940s. The Soviet Union designed it in response to Western advancements in jet technology, and also drew upon some early German jet designs. It got swept-back wings, which gave it speed and maneuverability to dominate in the Korean War, where it was fighting at a lot of times F-4 Corsairs, which is of course a propeller-driven aircraft. It took a lot from Western technology, but they also designed a lot of things by themselves. This jet is powered by the Klymov VK1, which is actually basically a copy of the Rolls-Royce Nene engine. And the way they ended up with that copy is kind of funny. They basically told the British, hey, can we take some of those engines, and we pinky promise we won't copy them, and then they copied them anyways. They did make a lot of changes to it though, so it's not exactly a Rolls-Royce Nene, but it is of course kind of a copy of it, but it ended up being quite a nice engine. They later would put an afterburner on it and put it in the MiG-17, and it would actually be quite a nice engine in that iteration. And up front of the cockpit, we have this massive intake that provides all the air for that Klymov VK1 engine. It could push this thing up to an altitude of 50,000 feet, which for the 1940s was pretty impressive. It has a gun camera right here so that it could take pictures whenever it was firing its guns, and it does have a landing light. Most interestingly is that this thing was kind of a tractor. It could be driven off-road to some degree and could operate out of soft fields. So it actually has two little ports right here that you could put a tow rope through to pull it out of the snow or mud. When the Korean War broke out in 1950, the skies were dominated by piston engine fighters. That changed when the MiG-15 appeared. It quickly outclassed early American jets like the F-80 Shooting Star and forced the US to rush the F-86 Sabre into combat. The MiG-15 with its swept-wing design gave it a lot of maneuverability and speed, but it was no slouch in armament either. These two 23mm cannons could shred most about anything in the sky, and the deadly 37mm cannon looks like it shoots baseballs. This was designed to take down a B-29 allegedly in a single hit from the 37. The most famous battles involving the MiG-15 took place in MiG Alley, a stretch of airspace near the Yalu River. Here, Soviet pilots disguised as North Koreans and Chinese engaged in dogfights with American Sabres. These encounters became legendary as both sides pushed the limits of aerial combat. The thing with MiG Alley was that the Russians could never be seen in a direct engagement with the Americans. It simply would cause an all-out war, so they chose to disguise it, of course. This MiG-15 here at the museum, the original logbooks are still intact. They're in Chinese, and I, of course, cannot read Chinese, but we do have the original logbooks. What's interesting is that it at some point shows that the Russians delivered the aircraft to the Chinese, and then a lot of logbook pages are ripped out during the Korean War. So that's why here at the museum it's thought that this is one of the participating MiGs, because those parts of the logbook are just simply missing, and we don't know what happened to them. Inside the cockpit, pilots relied on basic instruments and their skill. The MiG-15 was a joy to fly for experienced pilots, but could be unforgiving for rookies. It was fast, powerful, and deadly, but also a bit unstable at high speeds. And here's a little bit more of the cockpit. A lot of the dials are still in Chinese, and that is just more evidence from the Korean War. A very historical aircraft, a very important one at that. This one still flies in air shows, but it's not known how much longer it will still fly because it's simply too historic of an aircraft to continue flying. The MiG-15 wasn't just a great aircraft. It's a symbol of the Cold War. This is the jet that somewhat started the battle between East and West and gave us technology advances that would carry on today. If it weren't for the MiG-15, who knows what would have happened. It was a really good fighter, but because of it, we got really good advancements in the F-86. The Soviet Union would respond and the West would again, and such was the cycle of the Cold War. But it all began with this. And even today, all these decades later, there are still MiG-15s in active service. This one still flies air shows. It's really interesting to get to see this airframe up close because this exact airframe fought the United States in the Korean War. Here in the United States, we often give a lot of praise to our veterans, but a lot of times we lose sight of the fact that there are human beings on both sides of the conflict. Despite this airplane fighting against the United States, there was still a pilot on board. There was still somebody on board that, of course, was doing what they thought was right. And whether or not that was right or wrong in the end, they, of course, put their life on the line to take to the skies. And that's something that's very interesting about aviation. No matter what country you go to, there are men and women that want to put themselves in the sky, even if it's for combat, because flying is a calling. And it's because of this calling that brings us all to aviation. I know if it wasn't for a calling to aviation, I certainly wouldn't be here and I wouldn't be making videos about this. But aviation has called me. And presumably it has you too because you clicked on the video and you're still here. And by the way, thank you so much for watching. This is gonna be a little bit of a shorter video and I love making these. This is a fantastic aircraft, but please let me know what you want me to make a video on next and consider liking and subscribing. Thank you. Hey guys, real quick, I know you thought that was the outro, but I just wanted to point out, I've been putting a lot more time into these videos, and it's because you guys seem to like this format. This is gonna be my first video in Apple ProRes 422 codec. It's shot in 4K, and it has no color grading, which means I have to do all of that in post, which means editing this video, if you've seen it, probably took me the better part of 2-3 days, even for this short video. However, it's been really fun because I think it gives you guys a slightly better view of the airplanes. If it looks better in my old footage, let me know. If you like the old footage better, let me know, and we may go back to that. So thank you, and just comment that if you have a preference.